Sometimes it's the things we never even think about that turn out to be the real MVPs.
Right.
Like this article you sent over about the hypothalamus. Before today, hypo what now? But now I'm realizing this tiny part of the brain is basically running the show in ways I never imagined.
Yeah, it's a hidden gem for sure. We rarely think about it, but the hypothalamus has its tiny fingers in so many pies. Everything from those late night snack cravings to how our bodies react to stress.
It's like the ultimate multitasker.
Well,
But let's back up a sec. The article mentioned it's about the size of an almond and tucked away deep inside the brain. So where exactly are we talking anatomically speaking, and why is that important?
okay, so picture it this way. Imagine the brain is like a bustling city. The hypothalamus has prime real estate nestled right below the thalamus, kind of like a central command center.
Mhm.
And this location is key because it allows the hypothalamus to tap into major communication lines. It's got direct connections to other brain areas, and it's snuggled up to the pituitary gland, which is like the body's master hormone regulator.
Okay, so location check. Now about that master hormone regulator bit. The article mentioned the hypothalamus acts like a conductor for this whole hormonal symphony happening in our bodies. Is that what makes this little almond-sized area so powerful?
Exactly. The hypothalamus produces and releases hormones that act like messengers, giving instructions to other glands in the body. Think of it like a cascade effect. The hypothalamus sends out a signal, and suddenly a whole chain reaction is set in motion.
Okay, so walk me through this. Let's take stress as an example because who doesn't love a good adrenaline rush, right?
hmm
The article mentioned something about the hypothalamus pumping out CRH when we're stressed out.
Right, so say you're facing a tight deadline or about to give a big presentation. Your brain senses that stress and signals the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus, in turn, releases CRH, which then tells the pituitary gland to release another hormone called ACTH. ACTH then travels down to the adrenal glands sitting right above your kidneys, and boom, out comes cortisol, the stress hormone.
So that's why stress can feel so physical. My heart is racing.
Yeah.
I'm sweating. It's all thanks to this chain reaction starting from that tiny signal in my brain. Wild.
It's incredible, isn't it? And that's just one example. The hypothalamus is involved in regulating so many other hormones, everything from those hunger pangs you mentioned to our sleep-wake cycles.
Speaking of hunger, the article mentioned a hormone called ghrelin. My new favorite word, by the way. Apparently this ghrelin character is the one whispering sweet nothings to my stomach all day long.
Ghrelin is indeed the hunger hormone. When your stomach is empty, it sends signals to the hypothalamus, which then releases ghrelin. Ghrelin travels to different parts of the brain, including the area responsible for reward and pleasure, making us crave those delicious, often calorie-dense foods.
That explains a lot about my snacking habits. But okay, back to the structure of this mighty mini-conductor. The article mentioned it's divided into three main sections, the anterior, the middle, and the posterior, each with its own set of responsibilities. It sounds like a well-organized office up in there.
You could say that. Each section is like a specialized department managing different aspects of our physiology. For instance, that temperature regulation we talked about. That's largely handled by the anterior hypothalamus. It's like our internal thermostat, making sure our bodies stay within that sweet spot of 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius, whether we're bundled up in winter or sweating it out in summer.
Okay, so anterior is for temperature control.
Got it.
What about the middle section? What's on its to-do list?
The middle section is basically the Department of Appetite Control. It receives signals from our gut telling it whether we're full or hungry, and then it releases hormones like ghrelin to get us moving towards the fridge. It's also involved in things like thirst regulation and blood pressure control.
So it's making sure we're fueled up and running smoothly, literally. Okay, that leaves us with the posterior hypothalamus. The article mentioned something about memory being connected to this section, which is so interesting to me. I wouldn't have thought our almond-sized friend here would have anything to do with memory.
It's true the posterior hypothalamus doesn't get as much attention for its role in memory, but it's an important player behind the scenes. You see, the posterior hypothalamus is connected to a region called the hippocampus, which is like the brain's memory library.
Okay, I'm picturing a little doorway in the posterior hypothalamus leading straight to stacks and stacks of memories in the hippocampus.
But you're right, they are intricately connected. And what's fascinating is how the hypothalamus helps link our memories to emotions and physical sensations. For example, think back to a time you experienced a strong emotional response. Maybe you aced a big presentation, or you had a close call while driving.
Oh, I've got one. Remember how I told you about my fear of public speaking? Where a few months ago, I had to give this huge presentation to a room full of executives. I was terrified, but I nailed it.
Perfect example. In that moment of triumph, your hippocampus was hard at work forming a memory of the experience. At the same time, your hypothalamus was busy orchestrating the physical and emotional responses associated with that success. The feeling of your heart racing, the surge of adrenaline, the rush of relief and joy.
So because of the hypothalamus, my memory of that presentation isn't just a dry, factual account.
Yeah.
It's infused with all those intense emotions. No wonder I still get butterflies thinking about it.
Exactly. And those vivid, emotionally charged memories, they tend to stick with us. The hypothalamus helps ensure that experiences with strong emotional significance leave a lasting impression.
This is all so fascinating, but I have to admit the article section on hypothalamic disorders was a little concerning. It sounds like when this tiny conductor goes offline, things can get complicated pretty quickly. What kind of issues are we talking about?
You're right, because the hypothalamus wears so many hats. When things go wrong, the effects can be wide-ranging. Some disorders impact hormone production, like hypothalamic hypothyroidism, where the hypothalamus doesn't properly release a hormone called TRH, which is essential for thyroid hormone production. That can lead to fatigue, weight changes, even difficulty with concentration and memory.
Whoa, so something as common as feeling tired all the time could actually be traced back to a tiny glitch in the hypothalamus. That's insane.
It is, and it highlights just how influential this tiny region is. Another example the article mentioned, which I found particularly interesting, is how hypothalamic dysfunction can disrupt our circadian rhythms, those internal clocks that regulate our sleep-wake cycles.
Okay, so this explains why some people are night owls and others are morning larks. It's not just a matter of preference, it's the hypothalamus calling the shots.
Precisely. Damage to a specific area within the hypothalamus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which acts like our internal pacemaker, can disrupt our sleep-wake patterns. This can lead to insomnia, daytime sleepiness, and make it incredibly difficult to maintain a regular sleep schedule.
Wow, the hypothalamus is sounding more and more like the brain's behind-the-scenes MVP with every fact we uncover. It's making me wonder about all the other ways it's connected to different parts of the brain.
You're thinking along the right lines. It's like Grand Central Station up there with the hypothalamus at the center of it all. Remember that fight or flight response we talked about earlier? Well, that's a prime example of the hypothalamus working in sync with other brain areas, particularly the amygdala.
The amygdala, the
Beautiful.
emotional center of the brain, right?
Yeah. Exactly. It's responsible for processing emotions, especially those related to fear and anxiety, and it has a direct line to the hypothalamus.
So when the amygdala senses danger, it sends like an SOS signal straight to the hypothalamus host speaker, which then kicks off that cascade of stress hormones and physical responses we talked about.
Precisely. It's like a rapid response team with the amygdala as the lookout, the hypothalamus as the dispatcher, and the hormones as the first responders.
That's one powerful network.
Yeah.
And it makes you realize that even though we often think of our brains and bodies as separate entities, they're constantly working together in sync.
Absolutely. And the hypothalamus is a prime example of that mind-body connection in action. It's taking in information from both the internal and external worlds, processing it, and orchestrating a coordinated response.
This whole deep dive has been a serious eye-opener. I feel like I've been carrying around this tiny but mighty conductor in my head my whole life, completely oblivious to all the amazing things it's doing for me.
It's easy to overlook, but the more we understand about the hypothalamus, the more we appreciate its role in shaping so much of who we are, our behaviors, our emotions, our physical responses to the world around us.
It's like that quote, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. This tiny almond-shaped structure has completely changed my perspective on how my brain works. Next time I feel stressed, get a craving for something sweet, or even just wake up in the morning, I'll be thinking, thanks, hypothalamus.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the quietest corners of our bodies, there's this incredible, intricate world at work, keeping us functioning, keeping us balanced, keeping us alive.
Couldn't have said it better myself. A huge thank you to you for being our guide on this incredible journey into the hidden world of the hypothalamus. And to you, dear listener, thank you for sending in this fascinating article and igniting our curiosity. We'll be back next time with another deep dive exploring a whole new corner of the universe, both inside and out. Until then, keep those questions coming.